Recording countermeasures. Subject, Plastic Man. Crystallization is going to be the key here. Eel O'Brien is happy to rub all over just about anything. Plenty of opportunity to acquire cellular samples. Results are enlightening. Eel exists in a fluid state, neither entirely liquid nor solid. This semi-liquid form remains stable at relatively high and low temperatures, provided that the temperature change is gradual. A sudden change, on the other hand, induces a complete change of phase, creating a truly solid or truly liquid form. His cells also show tremendous resilience. Even after subjected to the phase change, they eventually restore themselves to their original state. So even catastrophic damage, say shattering or decanting into multiple containers, should be restorable eventually. The effect of this shock and dismemberment on his mind is less predictable, however. Further research needed here. Recording countermeasures. Subject, AQUAMAN. Lack of water incapacitates Arthur quickly and thoroughly enough as a countermeasure. He's strong and willful enough, however, that physically incarcerating him would just make him that much more dangerous. Instead, why not make him incapacitate himself, perhaps through fear? The Atlantean neuroreceptors for water-related senses, for smelling it, sensing it, processing it biologically, are much more highly developed than in normal humans. Thus, they are much more susceptible to chemical attack. The Scarecrow has already done a substantial amount of work on customized fear responses. The only question that remains is a delivery system. Arthur's skin is too tough to rely on delivery through, say, a dart. Gas attack, on the other hand, might potentially be delivered with stealth. Recording countermeasures. Subject, Wonder Woman. I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen Diana accept failure, and in every one of those cases, someone else has to point out to her that she'd failed. Amazons, it would seem, don't understand that sometimes doing your best still isn't good enough. Or perhaps they just understand it much better than the rest of us ever will. What if Diana confronted a perfectly matched opponent? What if she were to face an exact duplicate of herself? A foe who was just as good as she is in everything. Same speed, same widths, same strength. Would she even realize she was evenly matched, or would that competitive drive carry her past the limits of her own body? Obviously, I can't provide her perfect match, but perhaps she can be made to think she's facing one. Jean could induce such an hallucination, and there might be artificial means such as a nanobot on her cerebral cortex. Recording countermeasures. Subject, Green Lantern. Kyle is as dependent on visual feedback as I'd suspected. The driving force may be his imagination, but he needs to see how his projections are forming in order to fully finish and control them. Any number of blinding agents could be used for short-term interference. Pepper sprays, mind acids, and the like. However, that's not going to work for any sort of longer-term, but still reversible, incapacitation. Perhaps Kyle's own imagination can be turned against him. The power ring itself could probably induce blindness, if he could be convinced to make it so with the right post-hypnotic suggestion. The ring itself might do all the work. Recording countermeasures. Subject, JLA reserves. The atom's white dwarf belt might be induced to collapse further, compressing him to subquantum size, or even creating a micro-black hole. Need to investigate less permanent solutions. Steele's hammer almost certainly targets and returns on some sort of encoded transmission protocol. Intercept, jam, interfere, countercommand. Perhaps in conjunction with the signal device trackers. Intense bombardment from a linear accelerator should cause Firestorm to fission back into his component personalities. They, in turn, will be easily dealt with. Oliver Queen is every bit the playboy that I pretend to be. Green Arrow can probably be distracted with any number of positive or negative changes in his personal life and fortune. Need more data on New Genesis and Apocalypse. At some point, I should set up an expedition and poke around both worlds for myself. If I can just get my hands on a mother box for 10 days or so. Success with that muscular toxin, finally, should cause strong, but not life-threatening constriction of the larynx, providing an option for dealing with a number of individuals. Black Canary and Zatanna, especially. Dmitri is a good man, but his rocket red armor, this is Russian hardware. I'm surprised it works at all. Soviet engineering might produce outstanding tractors, but the rocket red technology was obsolete a decade ago. Piece of cake. Recording countermeasures. Subject, Flash. The vibrational characteristics of Wally's superspeed at full strength are very nearly the same as Barry's. The countermeasures I devised for Barry should continue to suffice. They may also have application against other speedsters, if this vibrational pattern set is common. Addendum: recent developments hint at some sort of unified speed force, which would explain the similarities between the various speedsters I've observed. More data on this phenomenon will have to be gathered. I believe these vibrational characteristics can be mimicked, which suggests that counter-vibrational artifacts could be created which could not be vibrated through safely. Active countermeasure barrier materials could be used to create an inescapable cell, for example. Even more interesting are the possibilities suggested by introducing these countermeasures directly into Wally's central nervous system. Seems like a good general-purpose incapacitation with, hopefully, no permanent side effects. Recording countermeasures. Subject: Martian Manhunter. John could be serious trouble someday. God help us all if he were to go bad. There is no way I could neutralize all his various abilities. I'd have to incapacitate John entirely at once, and that clearly means fire. Not just a heavy incendiary attack. That might distract him, but ultimately it would just enrage him. What's needed here is something to set John on fire and keep him that way. Perhaps conversion of his skin composition into something flammable. Test on white Martians, if necessary. The real risk, though, is his mental ability. If he were to find these plans in my mind, who knows what his reaction might be? To this end, I've placed a series of post-hypnotic suggestions on myself which remove all conscious knowledge of this information from my mind. When I need to work on it, an externally provided activation phrase will restore the memory from my subconscious mind. When done, a burial phrase will move it back. Nothing is likely to prevent him from finding out about it if he searches my deep mind deliberately. But at that point, he would probably need to be moved against anyway. Recording countermeasures. Subject: Superman. Someday, I'm sure, it's going to come down to just him and me. For a lot of the others, I could just wing it if I had to, but not Clark. If anyone requires a methodical and considered response, it's Superman. If it's to the death, that's easy. I have my chunk of kryptonite. I have a pretty good idea of how it works and what it would take to synthesize more. But what if I merely want to stop him in his tracks for a while? Interestingly enough, certain properties of kryptonite persist even when it's undergone change at the atomic level. I found one relatively stable isotope, and there could be several others. But the effects of those isotopes, the small amount of testing I've been able to perform on daxamite cells, the closest Kryptonian analog I have found, has created more questions than answers. Ultimately, I would go with the red isotope. I am certain its output is weak enough not to kill Clark, and its half-life is so reduced that its effects should wear off reasonably quickly. But what will it actually do to him? I can't be sure. I know this much, though. It would certainly still be very disruptive, and probably extraordinarily painful. If the day comes that it has to be used against him, I only hope I don't have to be there to see the effects. I hope I don't have to look him in the eye when it happens.